Okay, hello everyone. Today we're talking about innovation-based value. It's kind of a new section of the course after we've gone through the basics of marketing strategy and then customer-based value. Now we're talking about expanding value for a company and also for society through innovation. I have a very special guest, a very appropriate guest for this topic, an old friend. We met in study abroad in Italy. We were classmates, course mates, and actually housemates, roommates. Jonathan Cifuentes,
Bunkmates.
bunkmates. Yeah, that's true. We had bunk beds in Italy. Uh, that was fun. Anyways, Jon Cifuentes, he's got a background in technology for like going on 10 years now. So, John, why don't you share some of that and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's John. I co-founded a company a few years ago called All Turtles with Phil Libin and Jessica Collier. Jessica was the kind of early person at Medium and Stellar cryptocurrency, and Phil, he's done a bunch of stuff in Silicon Valley and on the East Coast, but most notably was the co-founder and CEO of Evernote, the note-taking app.
Yeah, you want to talk about that process,
Sure.
how that company was formed? 'Cause it's kind of a fun story.
Turtles. Well, I guess my background in general, I went to school for philosophy and economics, very theoretical, had a hard time convincing my parents and mentors that this was going to be useful. Worked at some startups and did marketing stuff for the most part, like performance marketing and on the internet. And came out to San Francisco about 10 years ago, wanting to do a startup, wanting to kind of come where it is, which I learned was maybe a bit of a myth, the Silicon Valley
Oh, yeah.
journey, which we can talk about. But
Yeah.
Turtles, All Turtles, we started it. What's the story? I was getting into venture capital,
Yes.
sort of as Phil was getting out of venture capital. So Phil, he left Evernote, or they brought in a CEO as the company was expanding, and his expertise is more in product. And he was working as a senior advisor or managing director at a large venture fund called General Catalyst Partners. I thought I was interviewing to work with him on the new fund, and he pitched me an interesting proposition. He pitched me to start a company, a product idea that he had, an analytics tool. I tried that for a couple of months and decided it was not a good idea, or rather, it's a good product idea, but a good product idea for maybe Amazon to
Yeah.
work on, or for Google to work on, and not
For you.
specifically not
Yeah.
me, but not a likely not a startup.
At
And
the time you were writing for VentureBeat.
yeah, I was a writer. I was a tech writer at VentureBeat, which is a tech blog. And I was doing original research and selling that research in different areas, mostly in mobile marketing technology. And actually, so I used to get these very business school pamphlets delivered, the Harvard Business Review print journals delivered. And one came at an opportune time. It was how to communicate with eccentric leaders. And it was some consulting company that did a study, and they created all these categories of personas based on how those leaders interact. And I forget, there was like a Martha Stewart, and there was an Oprah, and there was like these very famous business leaders, and they called them out for their different attributes. And I forget who identified Phil as, but the important thing was to get your point across right away. And like the first things out of you can't come with a deck and present data and sort of back your way into an argument. You just have to say the thing right away. So I sort of took a breath and was like, I think your product idea is a bad idea.
And you like that?
Well, he was like, it caught his attention.
Yeah.
Like he was like, well, why? And I gave him a few reasons why. And he's like, all right, I think that's right. So what do you want to do instead? I didn't have an answer to that. But at the time I had met my other co-founder, Jessica, and we started working on what was happening a few years ago. That was really popular, at least out here, was that venture firms were hiring product people and consultants to help their portfolio, or to start projects internally and have the fund kind of get first rights.
Yeah. That's the
So Jessica,
A16Z kind of.
Very similar, yeah, that Andreessen's doing, and lots of others. So Jessica and I put together a plan for doing that, and it just, I don't know if it was the timing was right, or Phil was, he had determined investing is not all that interesting,
Yeah.
but building new things is, like working with product founders that have a vision for a product size hole in the
Yeah.
universe. Was what he wanted to do. So we thought we could create a structure, a shared, and what we created was All Turtles, and it's a studio, not unlike like Netflix or Pixar. It's like a professional environment for product creators to get their thing made. So the original vision was to build a sort of shared distribution platform, a shared suite of services. We, like, our very first hire, he's the oldest person in the company, and he writes patent applications, and he does all of our IP. So
Nice.
we're working on 9 projects right now.
Wow.
Some are startups, some are products, some are stuff that is kind of internal that we're just building. But the patent portfolio is like locked tight, and it's the type of thing where no early stage startup needs a person. His name's Leonid.
Yeah.
No one needs a Leonid at any point in the very earliest of stages. It's like a super luxury to have something like that.
Yeah.
But we're able to figure out the model where we can spread him across multiple projects and kind of tap into like when you need Leonid at the important time.
So you have
And that's
marketing people, PR people, media people,
we
design
have a PR
people.
right. We've got lots of designers and developers, a handful of marketers on the performance side, on the brand side. And the idea is that these people are all not necessary at all stages, but they are like crucially necessary at specific ones.
Yeah.
So,
and what's some of the products that you guys have launched that have or have been involved with that have kind of gained some traction and
sure,
got people excited?
One that's been interesting, and they've had kind of a reimagining the last 6 months or so, and it's going really well, is called Replica.
Oh yeah, I like. I tried to do a study related to Replica.
That's right.
Research study. Yeah.
So it's very Black Mirror. It's
totally.
The story is very beautiful. It's a bot. Like it's an app. You can download it in the App Store. It's just called Replica with a K, and it has millions of users, and you talk to it, and you tell it about your day. You tell it how you're feeling. It asks you how you're feeling, and which is kind of interesting. This idea of like having a conversation initiated by a product.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's weird for like Latin American women. It's become super popular, like for a younger demographic in particular. The story is kind of magical. The founders, her name's Evgenia, and her best friend from childhood, his name is Roman. Roman passed away tragically, suddenly in a car accident in Moscow. And they were working on a conversational neural network for restaurant recommendations, which is like, it's a sentence to say, but not a good.
So I could have told my app I'm hungry for some sushi, and it would say, "Hey, you might want to try sushi for you," or whatever.
So not that compelling of a use case. And her name's Evgenia. We call her Z. She was thinking through like, what are conversations that you would pay to have, like we have so many use cases for these conversational interfaces for conversations that we would pay not to have, like customer service, and those usually go pretty poorly. But like, anyway, so she was kind of having this thought exercise and grieving about her lifelong friend who had passed away. And she had talked to Roman's parents and family and asked if it would be okay if she would spend time at night, like reading old text messages and reading old emails and just kind of remembering him. And she had asked his family if it would be all right to kind of upload this corpus of conversations with Roman into their system and see if they could like talk with Roman. And they did, and they worked on it for a couple of months, and it wound up becoming like a super popular, successful product. Like a lot of people resonate, either with the sense of loss or just the loneliness factor. And that what they've been doing now or more lately is from a more acute mental health angle, like an assistant that's designed to help you through specific like high stress environments.
Yeah, I remember when I was playing around with it a few years ago. It was like very encouraging. Was the conversation? It was like this little encouraging robot friend or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I could see at the time how if someone was lonely, they might go to the app, and then if they, were conversating and feeling some sense of trust or affirmation, they could start taking recommendations for how to, you know, look for different tools that would help them with their loneliness or any mental health struggles. So,
Right.
and it seems like a good space to be, given that right now in coronavirus, a lot of people are kind of locked in places
That's
without
right.
someone to talk to. Although lots of people have been zooming as we have. So that's neat. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that that company or that product is still catching on and helping us. I think it's certainly interesting. It's kind of like dances on that zone of like, is this good or is this, you know, uh,
Creepy and
creepy and
weird.
weird? Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think you just got to use it and decide for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about innovation-based values, and I have a set of slides that I usually run my students through, and I'll kind of have you chime in with your thoughts and your industry perspective.
Sure.
So the starting point is, what's the best innovation of all time? What do you think? What's your opinion?
Pet rock.
Pet rock, yeah, not bad.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Um,
Amazon Web Services.
the most successful, probably, yeah. A lot of people say the printing press. I think that's like a common
Hmm.
answer. And did you ever go to Piazza de Michelangelo in that little monastery or whatever it was near?
I did. This is Florence inside baseball for the
Yeah.
class,
So
but yeah, I
this
did.
room is part of this museum, and it used to just be full of monks who would just kind of hand copy down on lambskin pages, like from, to make a copy of a book. They would just kind of write it out over and over and all day long. And what struck me about that place is, I don't know if you did the tour where you saw there's like this small little room that the richest guy in the world used to hang out with. He was one of the
No.
Medici family. So the
Okay.
Medici's had like the first major banking system through Europe. And so he's the richest guy in the world, and he can hang out anywhere he wants, I guess. Like, at least he's got as much money as he could desire, and he just wants to hang out in this one little monastery. And he had this like his own room and his own little cot. And I was like, why does that guy want to hang out there? Like, and I thought about it, and it's like, well, you can't do much with money at the time, right? You can't go on vacations. There's no yachts. There's no jet Gulfstream private jets or anything. What is the rare thing that you can access that's exciting and stimulating? And he would hire like artists to do crazy art. So that's the Renaissance. But he'd also want to hang out with these monks because they had basically a monopoly on the most interesting information in the world. Because they would
Hmm.
have all these, you know, people going on missions and traveling the world and encountering new ideas and taking that back. And some of those ideas would be kind of disrupting of the cultural and power structure of the church at the time, so they would want to keep a tight guard on it. But there they had cheese, wine, and all the best ideas. So they could just hang out, get drunk, eat some good cheese, and then like talk about these ideas that were not accessible outside of these walls. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like that's a reason why the richest person in the world wants to hang out here. And then the printing press basically expanded the set of information any one person could have. So I think that's, you can lock in information when you put it on a book, and then you can distribute it efficiently. And I guess that's been superpowered through the internet as well, and disrupting things. But the other aspect to this is, no, it's not actually the printing press, it's the candle, because light was essential to reading any book at um, like after the sunset, and people were out there working all day long, because we didn't have very efficient use of human labor at the time. So like just to get one candle to read one book would cost the average person a month of wages, because you had to like literally get some string and like dip it in animal fat over and over, and that's why they'd go out like hunting whales, to try to get the whale flubber or whatever.
Connor, you're full of information.
This is my favorite slide of the. I just it fascinated me. I was like, I got so awestruck when I saw like, you know.
Well, it's interesting. The framing here is like the what's important about these two products is their ability to distribute
Yeah,
information, and like you can make a likeness to current products like what's interesting. I mentioned AWS.
yeah,
Like AWS allows people like me or you or anyone in the class to rent scale at an incredibly cheap price
yeah,
and potentially reach a huge audience because of that.
yeah.
So,
Netflix famously has most of its computing needs built on Amazon Web Services, which is funny because
right,
Amazon's kind of a rival. But if
right.
they're going to try to grow the number of users by 20% every month for a while, which they were doing, you can't really pull that off if you have to buy your own physical computing, and they'd like just be constantly buying more computing. So AWS centralizes that, which is a good reason for them being the most important invention, I would say. But yeah, I think for someone who's a nerd and likes knowledge, like to me, like Wikipedia is the place that kind of represents like the perfect version of this right now. Like,
I just go into too many like deep dark Wikipedia
oh yeah,
holes.
you give me Wikipedia and Google Maps, and I can be happy for a week. Like, that's I yeah. I'll sit down, meaning to do some research, and then I'll just somehow some location will show up on my computer, and I'm done. But too much freedom in my job. So, anyways, yeah, the history of light. There's a cool podcast that I took some of the highlights from to explain that. But I think um, what we can think about when we think about the best inventions, we can also think about the worst inventions. So, what's the worst invention of all time?
I don't
I
know.
mean,
I
just
don't,
thinking in extremes can help you kind of think through the definition, which is
the worst invention of all time. Maybe like
yeah.
the suicide doors on old Lincolns.
What are those?
Uh,
For
these
drive-by
doors on,
shootings?
yeah, well, they used to open out, I can't, like
Hmm.
this way, like the passenger side doors, and
Yeah.
people would fall out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Good call. This is my answer to this. Although maybe it's controversial.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah. The thing that was documented in this article is that all these companies kept saying that they had more and more innovations, and someone documented in quarterly reports how many times the word innovation was used. And it was like a huge increase in numbers of innovations that were touted in a quarterly call, but the actual percent of revenue that came from new products was flat. So it was like we're just trying to, innovation became kind of this buzzword, hot topic, and I think it's worth celebrating and worth, and that's why I have it as part of this class, is because to me it's the one aspect of how we can kind of unlock capacity or increase enjoyment or increase, mental health well-being without kind of just dividing and splitting resources. So it's not just I get something more and you get less. It's I can create something where we can both benefit. I guess right now the most important innovation would be a vaccine for coronavirus, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
it's whoever makes that vaccine will get glory, they'll get money, they'll get resources, but it's certainly gonna expand the quality of life for all of us. So that's
I like that framing
yeah,
for a definition for innovation, where it's not just a new
yeah,
product or service. It's something that allows for the pie to get bigger.
exactly. Yeah, new is not well. It has to be new, I guess, in order to get that bigger part, that change. But so yeah, the definition is fits that, which is a creation of substantial new value for customers and the firm by creatively changing one or more dimensions of the business. So, what do you think about that definition? How's that?
I think it's pretty solid.
Do you have any aspects you really like or dislike or would modify?
I'm locked in on the word
Hmm.
creatively, as to why that's a requirement, but I would just argue that
Yeah, you could do it
the
accidentally
best.
or
Well, that
unintentionally.
sure that
Yeah.
happens, but the best firms I think that do this on a regular basis have realized that creativity is not like this magic like spark
Yeah.
from the universe, but can really be like a structured,
Process.
rigorous
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
wh- who are the creators out there um, that you're seeing in your world that you're like, wow, like whatever this person does, um, I need to study or I need
Mm,
to look to, or I want to learn from, like, or maybe you've already learned from a lot, but
yeah, like I think at this stage of my career, I'm pretty focused on the things that we're building,
sure,
and maybe have a bit of a myopic view on just like what's going on
yeah,
right in front of me. But what we modeled ourselves, and the business model for All Turtles is not dissimilar from a studio where we appreciate capital gains from
hmm,
things that we're involved in as an investor or
yeah,
a supporter of some kind, and we also just build and sell and distribute and license our own products. And it makes me think of Pixar as
yeah,
like the most interesting, most
yeah,
consistently innovative. Like every new Pixar movie is like
awesome,
excellent. It's
so
like
good, yeah,
technically beautiful,
beautiful, yeah. It makes
and
me
they
feel like we might be living in a simulation because if they can make things so lifelike, like the joke I've been saying recently is with I just saw Onward and Frozen 2. It's like if the emotions of the
mm,
actors of these kind of you know lifelike but computer generated characters can evoke so much emotion in me, then like what was going to be possible in 10 years. Did
right.
you see Frozen 2?
No,
So you gotta see it. I'm like,
I don't have young
I
children.
know, but I'm such a fan. You go watch it with your nephews or niece. But anyways, they starting scene, they pan in from like they cover like maybe like something that would be the equivalent of 10 miles, just a constant shot that would be shot on like something like a flying drone in real life, and everything, all the perspective is perfect. So it's not like there's blurriness or fading out like old school cartoons. They're just like a painted background that they would like
Right.
overlay something in the foreground. It's like everything's to scale. So like as you're flying super fast, these things that were detailed but in the background just get closer and closer in focus. It's very impressive. But yeah, it's interesting you
Yeah.
guys are using Pixar as a kind of idea for your own creation, for your own like looking for examples from something else and applying it to a new industry is a good source for ideas. I think A16Z famously says that they model themselves off of a Hollywood agency. So like
Huh.
yeah, so it's like you guys are like the studio and they're thinking like trying to be
Finding the talent.
yeah, I forget who wrote a book, Michael Orvitz or Ovitz or something like that. He's a big Hollywood agency guy, but okay. So for me, these are things that I like about it. So generate new value. Okay, that's kind of the obvious. But the other aspect we're talking about is it's not just product or technology improvement. It could be basically the same product, but you could change a different aspect of the business. So like for Netflix, Blockbuster and Netflix both were letting you watch DVDs that you rent, but one was a subscription model and the other was kind of more a use-based model. And so that change had
Hmm.
a bunch of profound other changes for how they operated and basically enabled people to not worry about late fees, to not worry about the time pressure. So it basically created value just by changing something around the product, not the product itself. AWS similarly, you can rent computing. And then the other thing I like for like a simple thing is just anything that breaks a constraint. So there's some bottleneck, there's something holding back some efficiency or some value that could be captured, and you try to break that constraint, and then there could be a new choke point. So the Netflix example is like it used to be once they went to streaming, it used to be that you could only watch on TV whatever was on at that exact moment, or if you happened to DVR it ahead of time. And then Netflix basically like got access to Showtime's whole library, and so if you wanted to watch something on Showtime, it had to be on their actual channel, like whatever they thought was available then. And so you're kind of constrained by time and the scarcity of time. Versus on Netflix, it's like pick whatever you want in Showtime's library, you can watch it. So it's like another constraint they broke when they went to streaming. But how do you guys think about a product and if it's actually going to be adding value and being useful? And
Hmm.
is there a framework you guys work through in terms of like breaking constraints or um, What's
Not specifically. And I looked at these slides ahead of time, and I'm wondering, where to apply certain processes that we've either made up or
yeah,
stolen
give me
or.
one.
uh, well, there's not an easy answer to it. It's what we're or what my job is in particular is working with corporate customers and like facilitating innovation in a way, kind of providing innovation as a service. And that process, it varies depending on what the outcome we're trying to get. Like, are we just trying to build a new product? Are we trying to build a new business line at that company that might do lots of things? Are we trying to build something that the corporate strategy or venture arm of that company would want to grow and foster? Like, are we trying to just boost up an area that they're interested in?
Yeah. So
there's no set way.
Your set client or your client is the executive, the decision maker at some bigger company that wants to invest in something innovative, but you have to find out kind of what their needs are, they'll get excited about, or what resources they have, and then go back to your team at Alternativals and say, what can we do? Is that kind of
what we do specifically? I wonder if we could walk through examples and share stuff on my screen.
yeah.
What we do is they're a little. Is anything shareable? I'm not sure.
You signed an NDR.
We can edit it in. Yeah, they're not enforceable in California. But whatever. So what we do is we have specific areas that we are just personally interested in. In like the two major buckets that we focus on are kind of future of work and future of health. So it's like things that make people happier and more productive at work, and things that make people healthier and wealthier in their home or in their communities. And those are like pretty giant Venn diagrams that overlap in a lot of ways and apply to a lot of companies, especially now, that are interested in making the world a better place. I'm trying to think of like a process-driven approach that we've taken where we're really evaluative of what a particular customer is already doing and what they're a lot of times. So we've seen this show up in multiple ways, and this is a McKinsey framework of horizons: Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Have you heard of this? It's basically a way of time bounding innovation, where Horizon 3 is like let's say like you're an audio company and you make these. Horizon 3 would be stuff like you have a VR team that's like hacking together some hardware, all of these different like crazy ideas for how you could do industrial VR in a shipping facility or in a oil plant, or like doing these thought exercises of like, wouldn't it be amazing if you could have this thing on your face and you could walk around this facility and you'd be safer and you'd be better informed about your job? And it's like, okay, like that sounds pretty useful. What are some ways that we could bring that to life with some artistry? So we actually have, not unlike Pixar, we have like extremely talented artists and illustrators to help design these scenarios in storyboard format. Where we say, okay, like Jane, she wakes up in the morning, she puts on her this, and instantly she's transported to here, and here's her series of workflows throughout the day. And when you have like beautiful imagery attached to a compelling story, it just makes ideas feel more real.
Yeah. And so that helps with you working with your corporate clients, that they're more willing to invest and get excited about it and pull resources. Yeah,
exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't have good visual artistry. I actually have some horrible visual artistry we'll get to later in here. So maybe
cool.
You'll share your screen with us. You can see if you can scan to see if there's anything shareable. The last thing I'd just point with this from a business standpoint or a marketing strategy is so many companies come out with some innovation, but then aren't able to capture much value from it because they just get copied. So how can you seek differentiation and some sustainable competitive advantage? Facebook has network effects where they have, all your friends are already on Facebook and all the advertisers are already used to using Facebook's kind of advertising system and they have good targeting information. Where Snapchat kind of doesn't have that, so they came out with their stories and Instagram, which is Facebook owned, just copied it right away. So like I joke that Snapchat's strategy is just the gingerbread man, run around as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man, which is not where you want to be. Like so, if it's not something that you can differentiate or build a sustainable competitive advantage through relationships, through a unique brand that has a distributed image and meaning across lots of different people, it might not be worth it because the consumer will get a lot of benefit, the customer will get a lot of benefit, but you as a firm might not have enough benefit. So actually, this is a good slide for you to talk about since you're working with companies who want to invest in innovation, but maybe are facing some hurdles. So since all these companies say they want to be innovative and you see all these quarterly reports where they're mentioning innovation all the time, but you're not actually seeing more revenue coming from new products versus old products, what are the factors that suppress innovation?
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, I'll say mine, but yeah, I think you'll have maybe a better handle
So
on
in a
this.
factor, so we're talking like in a corporate environment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Everything, everything, like every. So companies are comprised of people who are extremely career
Yeah.
oriented. Like there's one major factor. Like people are less. It's the DNA which makes it a large company. So like large companies are extremely good at projections,
Hmm.
and especially large public companies. We are reliant on the way they are modeling out how they expect to sell things that they've already created. Like their whole DNA is
Yeah.
based on protecting their existing
Yeah,
positions.
maintenance is important. Someone's got to maintain the bridges, and big companies maintain what's the values that's been created in the past.
So this is where there's like a lot of big companies now. It's like really cool to have an innovation department
Yeah.
and try and behave like a startup. Startups have no positions to
Yeah.
protect. Like their whole reason for being is making a new thing, and it's pretty binary whether or not they're going to succeed or not. Whereas at a large company, when you're launching a new product or service, uh, it's very rare that you have a corporate stakeholder who is willing to stick their neck out there
Yeah.
and take that chance. So I think just the nature of being a large company suppresses innovation.
Yeah, and if you're projecting out for a startup that we're going to go from zero revenue to 1 million revenue to 4 million revenue over the next 2 years, that's exciting. But if you are a giant company that has, a few $1 billion of revenue every year, like those are decimal points. Like it's not going to
Right.
get people excited because they can't put that on their resume as a win. So yeah, if you're
Right.
career oriented, there's little upside in terms of those and potentially downside because you're not just maintaining. I think the main non-obvious answer that I have here is just people being too product focused. So a lot of the breakthrough innovations have actually
Hmm.
been changes where the product is almost had already been in existence before. It was maybe more of a process innovation or a branding or like Home Depot, right? The idea of buying construction supplies had been around for a long time. Home Depot just went direct to consumer. Like it used to be that contractors would buy, construction material, home garden material from a small, store that worked mainly with other contractors. And then Home Depot really popularized the direct-to-consumer home improvement market. Um, the other problem is self-reinforcing competition. So you got the established players, and they're so focused on other competitors in their space, they just dismiss the small startup that you're working on creating. And so they're trying to say like, think about the automobile industry, and they were so focused on okay, how do we get a truck that can carry a little bit heavier payload because they're getting most of their profits off trucks like GM versus Ford. And meanwhile, you got people out, doing self-driving cars or electric cars or ride sharing, and those are all where now today we see most of the kind of value in terms of like enterprise value looking forward in the auto industry resides with like the Ubers, the Lyfts, Teslas. But they were thinking about things completely different. So they had more of like a open field of a place to add value versus if I'm GM or Ford, I'm the CEO. It's like, what's my market share of trucks and SUVs? Because that's where my profits
Right.
are today. There's been some studies on hotels in small towns and how quickly, like, if one adds like free HBO and puts it on their sign, it takes one day for the other hotel to offer the same service. So they're just like so focused on each other, they don't have like a bigger horizon of how we could do things differently. Self-reinforcing advertising. It's basically you find out what your consumer wants, you get really good at studying them, your existing best customers, and then you communicate back to them that that's what you have to provide, which makes sense. So like Volvo says, hey, we have the best brakes and we have the best crash resistance technology. And that kind of self reinforces and they get stuck in this loop for a while. And then, what was it, Mobileye that came out with like the enhanced safety features through computers with radar and automatic braking?
That's
I
right.
think they got bought by Intel for a few $1 billion or something.
That's right too. Yeah.
So it's like again, there's so many cool stories, and I always have fun talking with you because you're always telling me more of these stories, being plugged into it. But it's like someone comes at it from a completely different angle, and hey, we'll just put a radar and a camera into the car itself, and then we don't have to worry about like the crumple zone of the front impact if we don't have impact in the first place. I think that's kind of cool. So eventually, like companies who are so focused on these one thing that they keep reinforcing and tweaking and getting better and better, they kind of solve the issue, but then they still just remain focused on it because if it worked before, it's kind of inertia and habit. Um, yeah, and then short-term business pressure is the other example where I like talking about Amazon. So they say like if everyone else is trying to hit their numbers for 1 year out or 1 quarter out, and we're thinking about what we can do in 5 to 7 years, then like we won't have any other competitor that's also aiming for something that's only going to pay off in 5 to 7 years. So we'll be more likely to kind of win by default. Not we don't have to be amazing if no one else is even competing with us. If you're the only one playing the game, you're going to win. So Amazon's famously like very long-term oriented, which reminds me of this conversation, which cracked me up. So Jeff Bezos, who's was the richest person in the world at the time before his divorce, um, asked Warren Buffett, "Hey Warren, you're the second richest person. You have the simplest investment approach. You talk about it all the time. You're always trying to tell people how to invest. People write books, et cetera, et cetera. How come people don't copy you and then take away your advantage?" And his response is pretty old G classic. No one else wants to get rich slowly. So I try to remind myself of that when I'm investing. And
Yeah, but Bezos has those divorcee guns now. Like he's got those
the
muscles.
pythons. Nothing motivates people to work out like change in life circumstances. Or yeah, have you seen the like 1997 version of him versus like now? It's like
Probably, but I imagine
it's like Terminator mode.
yeah.
So yeah, maybe you can share your screen at this point because I usually just kind of these are like old images from like a long time ago, but they kind of still remain true. Which is in terms of innovation processes, you can look expand your horizons, so not just thinking around about the product, but these are all other dimensions of the business that could be a place where you look for innovation. So a new way of doing things differently. And then this is the stage gate design process, which is basically like instead of just doing one project at a time and walking through all the stages, start like many projects at the same time, but then don't invest in all of them all the way through. So if they can't reach some certain benchmarks or hurdles of success, then you'll stop investing in them. But you can start investing in the next stage before they've passed the first stage, just to speed things up. So the best example right now of that is, did you hear about what Bill Gates is doing with the vaccines?
I hear a lot of information on two distinctly political polls
Yeah.
on this. What's the latest?
So I don't know if it's the latest, but I heard that he was going to build out the manufacturing for all of the top seven most promising vaccines for coronavirus now before they find out if they're safe and have efficacy. Because once we find out whoever is the best, whatever the best vaccine is, like if we've already been building out the manufacturing capacity, we can more quickly get it out to everybody. So that's an example of like stage gate, where you don't wait to find out which one's the best and then start manufacturing. You start manufacturing now, and then you can just stop doing the manufacturing for whichever ones are the losers, and you'll be ahead of the game for the winner. But those are kind of the two kind of long-standing popular innovation processes that I'm aware of, where consultants will come in and try to help lead companies through workshops around both. But if I stop sharing my screen and you start sharing your screen.
Oh boy, I don't know if I have anything too process driven or interesting. And maybe it applies a bit more to the slides we were discussing previously on the factors suppressing innovation. And it's important to note that we're not like a traditional consulting firm.
Yeah.
We're highly untheoretical. It was an interesting exercise for me, like reviewing these slides.
I'm talking about.
Oh, and thinking, because this is where I spent, my academic life too, and sometime after I was doing strategy consulting, and you're building frameworks and taking people through them. But when it comes to building things is really hard, and we are like 0% focused on, say, the supply chain implications of some of the products or services that we're coming up with, and really more focused on getting the thing to work and getting those first 1,000 power users to love it. Where when you make something that people really love, the distribution becomes kind of an after. Like that will be important in business as usual 2 years from now, but like that's not your problem.
Yeah, you can hire people and get monies. If there's something that's working, then people would join the party and figure out all the logistics. All right, so I guess I stopped sharing my screen. Do you want to?
Oh, I got something.
Right.
Let's see.
Cool, fun, interactive.
Zoom.
We'll see if it works.
Meeting.
I think I'm recording everything on my screen, so as long as it shows up.
You've disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh, yeah. Let me manage.
Keep those unruly kids from...
Yeah, I'm going to make you the co-host.
Okay.
See if that helps. This is exciting.
All right. What do we got? Is this working?
I think it is working.
You can see my screen?
I can.
Full screen?
It looks great.
And yeah, very minimal.
Yeah.
But this is how we've articulated innovation in the tech industry, at least in my world, in startup world. And I think it does a good job. And there's a framework on here, so it satisfies the requirements for
academics
existing in a school environment.
Cool.
So basically, historically in the tech industry, there's been two ways to make products, and this is the framework that we think through building things. So on the y-axis, you have experienced and professional, and amateur and risky as the gradients, and on the x-axis, it's protecting existing positions or seeking new opportunities.
I like it.
So large corporate customers of ours, big companies, they thoroughly live in that top left quadrant. The things that they do and the processes they have are relatively professional. Mm-hmm. They have a good idea of how to run business as usual, which, to be clear, is extremely fucking hard.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
is very challenging. Yeah. No, it's hard to do these things. Like, it's hard to service customers. Like, you gave Home Depot as an example of being innovative. Home Depot was a strategy consulting client of mine for a couple of years.
Oh, wow.
And you'd be amazed how hard it was to get the floor salesmen. I forget what they're called now. The people with the orange aprons walking around helping people.
I almost did that, helping people with paint back in high school.
Job.
Yeah.
It's a good high school. But how challenging it was to get those people iPads or iPad minis or iPhones to have as information devices, to have as point of sale devices, such an obvious thing.
Yeah.
But you'd just be surprised at the corporate challenges of recreating processes and redoing training and the legal implications. Like
Mm.
it's hard to be a big company when you have lots of customers and lots of employees, and there's so many demands and expectations to satisfy.
Yeah.
You're really focused on like, all right, we made this thing that's successful. Like, let's keep selling it. How many more of these do we think we're going to sell in the next quarter? Like, great. Like, let's
do that.
It's really hard to just dream up new stuff.
I think, yeah, when you have the diversity of your employee set and the customer set, you build all these processes to try to block and keep the worst case scenario from happening. Or you want to confine the possibility set of things that could go wrong, and then just like optimize that. And so you put all these structures and culture into place, even your hiring process, whatever, that it becomes like it works really efficiently in that existing world, but it also is not able to adapt very well.
That's right. Whereas the other way to make products is to do it as a startup.
Yeah.
And startups make the same mistakes over and over again. You know, the way they behave is extremely amateurish. We call it a flaming clown car.
That's where I belong.
I mean, when you look under the hood of even, you know, successful startups and some of the products and companies that you've named in this deck so far, like were complete dumpster fires for so long. Like until Zuckerberg hired Sandberg, like it was a mess and continued to be for a long time.
And I liked it.
However, their reason for being is for making the new thing. Yeah. So like they're extremely good at seeking new opportunities because that's the only thing that they do.
They have nothing to protect.
Yeah. So obviously there's an open quadrant here, and that's the one that we're trying to fulfill.
The one on the bottom left.
Well, it's Hollywood kind of figured this problem out in the last decade when Netflix came online, and they built, you know, both the distribution and a process-driven approach to being innovative.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what we're trying to satisfy.
That's cool. So I was talking a bit in one of the other lectures about Blockbuster, how they failed to do it, but you look at what Netflix is doing, and you know, eventually, if they want to, they can have merchandise, they can have theme parks, they can basically try to meet Disney at every touch point. Because they're launching their own brands and figuring out what works and have the data. I think I listened to a critique of Bob Iger the other day because he came out with that book, basically going through his career, the CEO of Disney.
Right.
And people just, you know, want to give him lots of praise for launching Disney Plus and just managing Disney very successfully through like the acquisitions of Star Wars and Marvel and Pixar, which are all studios, right?
Right.
But the one thing that they failed to do was get video games really as part of their. That's like the huge growth entertainment thing. And it's like, wow, even Disney, who's like one, established, but two, very innovative, and maybe that's the Hollywood thing, still has a hard time, like, you know, finding and being a part of the next biggest, most important thing in the entertainment world. But
right.
So,
all right,
I like
that's
it.
all I got.
That's nice. And your logo looks cool.
Oh, thank you.
This is your investor deck? I'm in. Take all my money.
Pause.
Stop. You gotta hit stop sharing screen.
Oh, I paused. There you go. Stop sharing.
Okay, nice. Let's see if I can get the PowerPoint back up and going. Wow, we're so nimble. This is working. Okay. So have you read or heard of either of these books?
I've read Clayton Christensen's book and a bunch of other stuff that he's done, and I've read excerpts from the book on the left.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about both, and I haven't read either of them. But
perfect.
I've read so many pieces talking about them and seen people talk about them, and also read the Wikipedia page. So
Connor and I were we were both really efficient students.
Yes,
I'll say.
We had to make time to play Tecmo Super Bowl. Well, yeah, we did a new venture class together, and we discovered we had a shared love for entrepreneurship and business.
That and I think our product idea came to life like in the last couple of years on Amazon or Netflix.
Yeah, at first I was excited when I'd have a good idea that got validated by someone else doing it, and then I realized like I like ideas and I don't like actually working on all the effort to make them come to life. So pretty much every time we talk now, I'm always trying to pitch you on some idea that I've dreamed up that you correctly dismiss as useless. But Wikipedia has good summaries of these, and I'm just going to touch on the highlights. But I think the reason why this belongs in a marketing class is marketing isn't just about the markets that exist and trying to align everything you do to your existing customers for an existing product line. It's also thinking about what are the new opportunities where consumers have unmet needs, or we can reimagine how we're doing things. So these are both relevant and different in terms of a place to think about where new businesses and new ideas come from. So the red versus blue ocean basic is kind of like that upper left-hand quadrant that you just shared with us. This is the known market space, and so it's classic STP, segmentation, targeting, and positioning. And whoever is the best at managing through testing and analyzing for incremental improvements is going to be the company that gains market share in that established place. So that's, Ford and GM both fighting for a little bit more market share in the pickup truck market. I have Sonite here because that's, for my students, they're doing Markstrat, which is a game where they compete in a very known space where it's just whoever can, download all the research reports and look for little clues, and just any marginal small advantage there can end up creating a huge advantage in market share. And then blue ocean is where you just try to escape the rules and change dimensions of competition. So I have Netflix versus Old Hollywood. Peter Thiel's book, 0 to 1. Did you read that? I like that. I actually read that book. It was...
I have issues with Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did like
Yeah, he's not a personal hero, but I like how he makes me think about things. So you're looking for anything. This is your whole business where the worst case scenario is it doesn't work, but you just lose what you put into it. But the upside is unknown, and it might be transformational. So that's why I like to share my crazy ideas with you. And I think the Lean Startup is the other book in this kind of this is like your reading list of how to show up in Silicon Valley and not seem like a fool, right? You read those two books and you can say the lingo of fail fast, MVP, but that's kind of blue ocean. But if you look at the financial impact of these innovation types, 86% of new innovations, new ventures would be classified as a red ocean. And this is where my graphic design skills are going to impress you.
Nice.
Yeah. Now I'm going to give you a quiz. So when we think about profits that are captured by innovations, now it's more balanced. It's 60-40. And which group? Is it the red ocean that represents 60% or the blue ocean?
I don't know. I said I looked at this deck ahead of time, and I forget.
You got a 50% chance of being correct.
All right, let's say blue ocean is still the smaller slice. That's my guess.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
It's only 14% of innovation new ventures, but it captures over 50% of the profits. And it's kind of like if you just open another restaurant, right? It's very hard to make profits because it's lots of other options, existing habits. So how do you find a blue ocean? This is the exercise I challenge my students to do. First, this is like the framework. So you stop thinking about competitors. You might think of a product category, but you just say, let's ignore competitors. We're not going to kind of subject ourselves to the assumption that to provide more value, you have to provide more cost. In fact, we're going to try to provide more value in a way that costs us less. And so Cirque du Soleil is the classic example where they wanted to do a circus. There's some Canadians. They're like, let's get rid of all the animal shit, and so we won't have any animals because they're kind of a pain in the ass to manage and move around, and we don't want to have stars either. So it's like the NBA, 50% of the revenue goes to the best players or the players themselves, and they get marketed, and that's why people come to watch the games. So Cirque du Soleil said we'll just use these anonymous people who are excellent athletes and entertainers, and but yet they don't have a market for their talent. So we'll just have them work for us, and they can each get paid well, but they won't get capture a large share of the value. They added something new, which was a theatrical production. They made it very evocative, and they targeted a new audience. So instead of families that typically would go to circus, they wanted to target people that were trying to go on a fancy date or business entertainment. And the reason why that target segment is so critical is because in those few use cases, people actually want to spend more as a signal to their person they're taking out, either their business client or their date, that they value them a lot. So having a higher price tag for Cirque du Soleil is part of the value proposition. Versus usually, like for families, they're on a fixed budget and you're not trying to like impress your kids, but like, hey, I took you to this expensive thing. Kids don't care. Um, so then once you launch, you want to develop some barriers to imitation. So Walmart and FedEx, that's for through scale and scope. For Cirque du Soleil, it's the brand. So I take someone to Cirque du Soleil and they're like, they know that it's got a reputation as something kind of novel and entertaining, or switching costs. Okay, so this is the exercise that I think I challenge students to say, buy yourself like a leather-bound nice journal and call it your Blue Ocean journal. And then every day, just think of one category of product that you encounter in the world and go through this exercise. And at the end of 1 year, you'll have at least 10 ideas that are going to be implemented by someone, maybe not you, but someone that'll be worth over $1 billion. And so, I mean, thinking of the idea isn't so much the hard part, but this is a good way to do it. So you start with a category of product that you're interested in, and you say, what is expensive but generally accepted as something that has to be a part of this product category, and we'll just axe it, we'll get rid of it. And then once you do that, it naturally will lead to all these other follow-on decisions just to like make it plausible or feasible that will create something that's in a brand new space. Because if it's expensive and other people haven't gotten rid of it, they think it's necessary. And so they've aligned everything they do with this necessary expensive component. But you get rid of kind of this very expensive aspect of the business, and then you have to make a bunch of other changes just to make it seem plausible. So this could be, the other decisions you can make is what do you want to reduce, what do you want to raise, something that's inexpensive but valued. In this case, they just added for Cirque du Soleil like some evocative music and lighting and dance and design, and then charge the big price. And it's not expensive to charge a big price if your customer wants to pay a lot of money to signal that they care a lot. And lastly, be different. Like find some customer where they want to exert some individuality and feel like they're seen, and then they'll kind of cling to you as like a new entrant who sees them and cares about them, and they can feel more unique and part of maybe a smaller group. And so my favorite example I think I've had students do with this is one of them. I guess technically this isn't feasible, but I still thought it was cool. They thought of a winery with getting rid of the actual property that is required to grow the wine. So what they would do is they would sell rich people in an area the wine stocks, and they would come and plant them at the rich person's house. And then the rich person, as like a hobby, would then tend to just a few small rows.
They could throw a big crush party in the fall and have all their friends come over and harvest all the grapes.
Well, no, then they harvest the grapes, and then you centralize it and you create a blend, and then you give it back to them some bottles for the year. So they get so basically they pay you for the whole experience, and you have zero costs other than in some cheap warehouse you bring all the grapes and you do all the processing. Apparently it wouldn't work because it's really important that the grapes all have like a similar plot of land for like the slope and the lighting and various technical aspects of winery. But I was like, damn, that would have been a cool idea to have like a distributed wine company. But I don't know. Any thoughts or things that came to mind when I was walking through this?
I was looking for examples. I was trying to think through categories of things. Like if I went, I'm terrible at these thought exercises, by the way. But what does come to mind on number 4, and I just want to kind of counter it a little bit, the idea of being different as important. I'm not sure that's super important. Like, I don't think startups today are trying to be all that different from other successful startups necessarily. or just I would say like two like generally accepted pieces of advice. I mean, one of them might be like be different, and another would be like the importance of your idea as being this sacred thing. And you've already made reference to this multiple times, is like actually doing the thing and making it
Yeah.
and then like servicing it and hiring people. Like all that shit is so hard.
Yeah.
Like if anyone listening to this has like an interesting idea, like talk to as many people as possible about it
Yeah.
and sharpen up your idea. Like no one cares about your idea. No one steals ideas.
Yeah.
Like it's not really a thing. Maybe that's important in established categories of corporate America. Like
Yeah.
boardrooms aren't going to like have public Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
But in like the earliest like
Yeah.
kernel of making a new thing, like tell everyone about it and try and get it sharper.
I always laugh when people want me to sign an NDA before they share an idea with me because I'm like, I got my own shit. Like I'm trying to dominate the pickup basketball court. I'm not trying to work on.
Right.
I got my research. I got teaching. I got enough in my life that I'm not trying to work harder or more. Yeah, in terms of be different, I think maybe this would reconcile what we're saying is, are you referring more to like best practices in how to operate? Like not trying to reinvent the wheel in terms of like internal operations?
Yeah, I guess maybe that's how it extrapolates out to you copy successful people.
Yeah.
Like, don't be different.
Yeah, so I'm more talking from like a branding standpoint or a customer base standpoint. So I think that would resonate with you a bit in that you guys, all turtles, are looking to be different in terms of external facing, like serving underserved customers and branding around that, or looking to, you guys do a lot of work in like France and Japan, which might be.
That's maybe there's lots of people who do this kind of venture studio thing similar to us, and maybe we're not trying to be different in that regard. But I guess you're right in terms of appealing to a new emotion, or a new potential set of customers. Then
Yeah, one thing I do at the kind of first lecturing class is I talk a little bit about Gillette versus all these startups that did direct-to-consumer razors. And each of those direct-to-consumer razor companies served a different kind of niche of customers that was smaller and had like a shared identity or like a shared image. And even though the razor itself is super generic, the brand positioning and just the imagery of like who's in the advertisement and how they're conveying themselves can.
So Dollar Shave Club actually came from a startup studio like
science.
us in it's science in LA. Peter Pham.
Yeah, and I think they got bought out for like $1 billion. And basically all they did was said like, what if we did a direct-to-consumer shave company for like 25-year-old kind of frat guys who like don't take themselves too seriously. And then there's like a whole bunch of other ones who all had slightly different. So anyways, the optimal distinctness is just the idea that like people want to feel like they are unique, but they also want to belong. And so that's why tribes are kind of a way you can kind of build some sustainable community around something that you do. Anyways, okay. I think the next thing is completely different, which is these innovator dilemma. And so blue ocean innovative and disruptive companies sometimes get confused because they're both talking about doing something brand new, but innovator dilemma is much more on technology, and blue ocean could have nothing to do with technology, right? It could be more just like what we're talking about with wine. And so the classic kind of story of why Clay Christensen wrote this book is he's this Harvard professor and he's teaching all these students and he's trying to do his best and really has all these great MBA students at Harvard Business School who are like cream of the crop, great test scores, great backgrounds. They come in, take his class, he imbues them with all this knowledge and they do all these cases and think through everything. And then at the end of the day, they go off and work for the best companies in America and then those companies lose. Like they go to work for Kodak or GE or all these kind of old classic big companies that have over time just become less and less relevant. And so he got really frustrated. He's like, what am I doing? Like I'm having these smart people come pay me hundreds of $1,000s a year and I'm teaching them everything I know along with my colleagues who are all smart and then they're going off into the world and like failing. what's the mistake? And what he kind of found out in this book, or what kind of is cool, is that the best companies that these great students were going to work for actually are good at what they're aiming to do, which is back to your point. It's just that in doing so, they create a vulnerability for themselves that other companies, new startups, will exploit. So the leading companies invest aggressively and successfully in all the sustaining technologies that are demanded by their best customers. So Blockbuster rolled out DVDs, they rolled out new locations, they had Blu-rays, they had games. They really focused a lot on investing in the technology to run the retail operations well, and also um, how to pick where retail locations should be. I guess they were a very well praised company for their real estate prowess. IBM and HP kept improving big computing centers for their, big banks and large companies that had a lot of computing needs, big data sets. So they would help those clients build out all their data centers and manage them. But then some new technology will emerge that is not useful for the best customers, and the best customers will reject them, and it does not meet their high standards and requires change and some lost features. So people who wanted instantaneous access to a DVD wouldn't want to wait for it to come in the mail, and they didn't want to have to plan ahead. Or these big banks would think that web-based cloud computing would be not secure enough and would be too vulnerable. And so for good reason, these leading companies would ask their best customers if this new technology would be useful for them, and they'd say, no, that's not for us, and they'd dismiss it. And oftentimes the managers don't have the skill set for the new technology, and there's worse margins. So does that feel like it's well capturing, or does anything come to mind?
No, I mean, it's bearing the lead of Netflix and AWS, but yeah, that seems right.
Yeah. So the shoe drops, and so this is how it plays out over time. So here's performance on the y-axis. So how good the product is, the product quality is, and over time, a sustaining company like AT&T will slowly roll out more and more improvements that are demanded by the best customers, and they'll just improve over time. And so if you're a startup, it's almost impossible to ever catch up to them on those established dimensions. You'll have to beat them on different dimensions. So AT&T went from analog to digital, and they had things like caller ID that they could roll out. Do you remember like doing prank calls in high school?
Sure do.
Yeah. What was the way you could hide your number from a
Star
star
69.
69? Yeah. And then how did you call someone back? There's also like a way to call people back.
I can't remember.
Did you remember eBombs World, the website?
I do.
So they had the soundboard of all the celebrities that had all different catchphrases, and
Like Arnold.
yeah, I love doing the Michael Jackson one. Oh, it's Michael Jackson. So we used to just take my mom's phone book, like written out phone book, and me and my friends would call all the people in her phone book as Michael Jackson. But
I believe these are some of the more tame pranks than the ones that you've shared.
oh
with
yeah,
me.
I'm not gonna share all the pranks. Got to somewhat protect the reputation. So one thing that you can kind of see as a clue to if it's a sustaining technology is it introduced at the top of the market and moves down over time. So at one point in time, to get caller ID, you had to pay extra money a month to AT&T for your landline phone, and then eventually it became just free and part of the standard phone. So usually those are improvements that are introduced at the top of the market. Usually you have to pay extra. Usually the best customers or the most demanding customers are the ones who adopt it first, and then over time it just is done so efficiently that everybody gets it and there's no longer a price. So that's one thing that Clay Christensen found, that he could kind of see as a consistency across lots of industries. Eventually it gets so good that the improvements aren't really noticed or appreciated by the most demanding customers, using kind of this existing technology so like going from digital to optical. But then a disruptor can enter from the bottom or with new customers in a new niche. So this would be voice over internet protocol, and this was back in when we were in Italy. Skype came out. I think everyone was on Skype, and they're all talking on their laptops to like their girlfriends or boyfriends back in America, and the calls would cut out. Their quality wasn't that good, but
Hmm.
it was free. It was free, and you didn't have to go down the street to like some payphone with some calling card or whatever. So it was more convenient. Um, so you would never have used it. I think we were early users of Skype because we would have never have used it if we were in the U.S. But we were finding out about it from people who were also studying abroad because it added a lot of value for people who were in like long distance overseas locations. So it's a small little sliver of the market that's dismissed, and it all was using this voice over internet protocol technology. So we were these least demanding customers. We're using Skype back in the day, and over time it gets better and better and better. And now, it's not even Skype Skype got bought by Microsoft, but it's Zoom now that's kind of getting rapid ascent in enterprise value as we're in this
No,
coronavirus time.
yeah, I mean, it may be interesting from a marketing perspective for Zoom in particular. They have the number one NPS of any company right now on
Wow.
that measure. For software in particular, but for enterprise software, it's far and away the number one
Yeah,
NPS.
I saw a tweet kind of teasing the Golden State Warriors. They said like Skype had the 3-1 lead to Zoom and then blew it.
Ooh,
Uh,
rough.
yeah, that's a good sports technology dig for all the Warriors tech fans out there. But yeah, I mean now all like this call is happening over voice over internet protocol, and just basically AT&T somehow failed to capture any of the value. So it was Skype, it was Zoom, it was even Zoom was spun out of Cisco, I think, right? Is that this?
Yeah, the founder and the early team were a bunch of Cisco product managers.
Yeah. So even Cisco wasn't able to capture the value. And so if you see a new technology that's entering at the low end of the market or for a new user on a new dimension, what it's probably doing is it's probably breaking a constraint because you're trying to serve the most constrained customers, these least demanding customers. And so if we go back to the beginning, the definition of what's an innovation, if it's anything that breaks a constraint, then you could look for constrained customers and you're likely to solve their problems. It's something that's going to break a constraint, and then eventually it gets so good that it can capture even the high end of the market.
Hmm.
I think mobile payments, didn't that emerge in like was it M-Pesa in Africa?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the first mobile payment network was this
Wow.
thing M-Pesa in Africa where people would, I believe this is correct, but they would text each other.
I was gonna say, is it SMS
Yeah,
based?
it was
Probably.
SMS based, and they would text each other minutes. It was the original origin because everything was prepaid. People didn't have
Uh-huh.
postpaid, so you'd prepay your minutes, and they set it up so that like if I had 100 minutes and you had 10 minutes, and we're running out of minutes, I could just text you my minutes if you were on the same network as me. And
Yeah.
so whatever the mobile provider was like people started using it as currency because you had to buy
Sure.
your minutes. So it was the first digital currency. It was the first mobile payment network, and it happened in a place where people didn't have established banking. There wasn't community banking. There weren't like ATMs widely distributed, and so it was very constrained customers, and they figured out a solution, and then they were able to capture a lot of value from that.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, I think also like field health workers are being innovative in terms of like testing for disease that like in America we'll take a blood draw and send it off to some lab and it's very precise and very well calibrated. But these field testing kind of like papers, like almost like a pregnancy test where there's like some chemical reaction in a paper, are actually less error prone because you don't get mistakes in terms of like it might not be as accurate as a test, but if I'm spitting on the piece of paper or, you know, right there, coughing on it, whatever, we know it's mine. So there's no like room for mix ups or something getting lost in the mail or whatever. But if you're doing like
Yeah.
a blood lab, there's all types of points along the process where things get contaminated or messed up.
Hmm.
So, I mean, hopefully we can get like a coronavirus thing where you could just like breathe into something in the field. And so some of the technologies that are used in those constrained places are people are trying to think about if they could be adapted to coronavirus. But, um, so yeah, I think like going back to some of your products, you've designed things for some constrained customers, like or you're seeing things take off and work well for some constrained customers. So you said back to like Latin America women right now are using Replica a lot.
Yeah.
I wonder like if some of the cultural constraints they might face prevent them from having as much freedom to communicate.
Absolutely. Yeah, from freely speaking about your emotions.
Yeah, so if you are have that constraint, there's this app, and it's like you can use that, and it's okay because it's not like you're telling anyone else in society that you're vulnerable or whatever, or it's not like you're not texting some stranger or whatever. It's just an app. I know some people think therapy will work better with kind of like these chatbots because you won't be concerned about being vulnerable or having like someone judge you. So maybe that's a good sign for you guys. All right, this is a role play. I'm gonna be Charlie Rose. You're gonna be Jeff Bezos.
All right. Cool.
We'll act this out. So okay, it's working. All right. This is back in when you were taking out all the bookstores. So, Jeff, a lot of small book publishers and other small companies worry that the power of Amazon gives them no chance. We should go to the government and break you up for being having monopolistic powers. What do you have to say to that?
You got to earn your keep in this world. When you invent something new, if customers come to the party, it's disruptive to the old way.
Oh man, good point. But I mean, there's areas where your power is so great and your margin, you're prepared to make it so thin. You can drive people out of business, and you have that kind of strength. And people worry: is Amazon ruthless in their pursuit of market share?
The internet is disrupting every media industry, Charlie. People can complain about that, but complaining is not a strategy. Amazon's not happening to book selling. The future is happening to book selling.
So I like that because going back to this example with Skype and how it happened to Zoom, it's like people could complain about Zoom or complain about Facebook or complain about whatever, but it's these technological shifts that are like taking out newspapers with Craigslist or whatever, or it's like the constraint has been broken and customers are liking that, so they're coming to the party, and someone's going to capture value from that. But that doesn't mean we should, like, as a society, just let them kind of run roughshod. And I like your guys' podcast at All Turtles, how you kind of talk about the dark side of some of these technologies that are impacting society. But you can complain as a member of society, but as a business, a competitor, it's not really complaining is not going to save you. If it's not Amazon, it'll be someone else. Okay, now you tell me. This is for you to counsel me, and you tell me why I don't have to be asked you for a job as I'm going to be unemployed, and especially now that we're going online and no one likes it.
Yeah, universities run a pretty good long-standing scam.
Scam? Oh. You want to say what university you went to?
I went to Boston College.
Are you a proud alum?
I think so. It doesn't matter that much to me. I got a good education. I'm happy for that.
Yeah. And then you did the study abroad program that
I did. That was the jewel of my college experience for sure.
I think so too. For me, I'm glad. I know a lot of students right now were planning on doing some study abroad, and that got shut down, which is I feel very sad for them. Hopefully, they can get some travels or work abroad or something to make up for it. But yeah, so if we look at the University of Oregon, we're an established player, and we kind of could just be representative of big state university, whatever. We offer career services. We offer internships and networking. We offer immersion trips. We have a gym you should come visit. It has a climbing wall. beautiful old trees that have been growing for over a century. It's a very idyllic place. Uh, or you could go online. You could take Coursera or University of Phoenix or Treehouse or this online University of Oregon now. edX is another one in that space. I think if I quit academics, I would want to go work for a startup in the ed tech space, like more distributing education and work on that problem. But
Yeah.
so a lot of people now are saying that a bunch of universities are going to go under because of coronavirus, and students aren't going to enroll in the fall. Um, and yeah, there's just a lot of
So,
fret and hand wringing and worrying that's going on.
sure.
But this is like this slide. I made this slide like years ago, like thinking that it was going to happen.
Foreshadowing, huh?
Well, the question is, yeah, do you put money in your kid's college savings account? Like in 20 years, are people still going to be
And that's still an effective tax financial tool for saving.
okay? Nice. uh, but yeah,
No,
what's your
it's a
projection? I mean, you're in the heart of a place where people are trying to.
this one is particularly hard
Mm,
just because of the tendrils, run into so many different industries and investors. Um, I think many private institutions will probably go this way,
yeah,
the way of the dodo bird a little bit,
yeah,
because they're just so, it's like they're so focused on converting top of funnel, like they're so focused on enrollment
yeah,
and like economic life as we like. It was not designed to be in this place where like humans don't leave their homes, and like one of the fallouts of that will be those private institutions. State funded schools is like a little bit different.
yeah. But where states
um,
are getting killed right now with funding themselves because they have to keep a
right,
balanced budget. They can't, like the federal
right,
government, they can't just like spend money that they create out of thin air.
right. And what I mean in terms of coronavirus, like I'm trying to stay. I think people are maybe like overreacting
Yeah,
to the long term economic fallout and maybe underreacting to the short term health
yeah, yeah, yeah,
situation. uh, but yeah, there's a number of alternative ways to do self learning
yeah,
that are growing in popularity, and
yeah,
it's all about becoming more widely available and being able to distribute to new sets of customers. Like, there's this famous example. There's a Stanford entrepreneurship class that at some point, it was like 6 or 7 years ago, Stanford started putting this particular class online
mm,
and allowing for open enrollment and allowing for other students from other universities to join. And the number one student, like it was a 300, large lecture, but with like many thousands of students attending. And the number one student was someone from Eastern Europe.
yeah,
And the number two student was like someone from South America. And like, I forget the number one student at Stanford, like in the
yeah,
class,
yeah,
who wound up going on to be valedictorian or going on to, summa cum laude,
yeah.
like decorated student, was number like 50 something in the
Wow.
course ranking for that particular course. So it's just like the having more access is going to open up all sorts of
Yeah,
channels for education. There's an interesting thing happening now at these schools, these alternative uh,
yeah.
learning set. Like, I don't know what you want to
Code
call them, but
Academy or Code Boot Camp type stuff.
I was thinking more like Holt School is
Mm,
one where you're able to, like, you go for free or for a very low rate, but you're signing up to give them some percentage of your salary for 5
yeah.
years after you graduate.
Yeah, Austin Allred or something like that on Twitter. He
I had him on the podcast
okay.
at Turtles.
Okay.
Yeah,
What's the company
yeah,
he's running again?
I forget.
Oh no. It's one of the major ones
It
in the
was a Y
online
Combinator
coding.
company. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I'll edit this part out. No.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um
The Lambda is the
Lambda
Lambda
School,
School.
yeah.
It's a Y Combinator company.
Yeah. So, I tell students, I'm like, my ability to teach has gotten better at maybe like 1% a year, if I'm being generous. But the cost of
Uh
coming
huh.
to University of Oregon has increased at like 5% a year.
Uh huh.
Um, and it's like, at some point, that kind of reaches a breaking point. Like, if the value provided, it's like we haven't gotten that much better at teaching. So the way we've increased value is by adding all these other, like, auxiliary benefits and auxiliary
Right. Right.
services, which are nice and useful and help create like maybe a positive course experience or life experience at college, not necessarily a course experience. But in terms of just like raw learning something, like, there's YouTube videos on everything you want. There's
Right.
books, there's podcasts galore. Like I'm constantly learning, and I don't take any classes anymore. I'm just going
Right.
on the internet and like I want to learn about, whatever. How do I do a statistical analysis, or how do I, or what's, John talking about on his All Turtles podcast. And you'll interview someone, and I'll be like, oh, that, made me think, made me learn. So I'd say like, I don't know. My PhD program, I learned a ton in it, but even in that PhD program, a lot of my learning was self-directed. It was going on the internet and finding, some article to read, or watching some video, or yeah, I just think the percentage of actual learning that can be attributed to a university versus the total learning that one has in their lifetime, like you want that percentage to be very small that you get from your university, because that means you're investing in self-learning. And if
Right.
if what you learned at university makes up 90% of your knowledge, like you're doing a pretty poor job of self-directed learning. So I think you were the one who told me to get my real estate license. So after study abroad in Florence, I got my real estate license just because you're like, I got mine. And I was like, shoot, he's learning on his own. Like, I should do that on my own. I never used it.
I rented one apartment and
Made some money off it.
yeah, paid for my semester of cash. It was
Damn.
fun.
Yeah, I didn't do any transactions ever, but I learned about it. I got a job as a marketing manager for a real estate firm.
There you go.
So that I guess paid off or whatever. But yeah, just kind of showed, or that showed me that other people are out there just kind of learning, like self-signing up to learn something. I was like, oh, maybe I should adopt a similar approach, not just do what is put in front of me. Um, but yeah, so I think universities in the long haul, it feels unsustainable at the increase in costs versus the value provided. Yet there's so many cultural norms and just like a space for people to discover. I think for you doing philosophy and economics, is that what you said you majored in?
Yeah.
Like that's beautiful to me because that's you just wanted to learn what you were interested in. Um, but so many students now, as the price of college has gotten so high, it's like, what's the practical value of this? What's the return on investment of this for me now? And they'll sign up for business classes because they just feel like that's the most like logical choice to kind of get a return on investment of their education. But it kind of makes me sad because I think you might learn how to learn better if you pursue learning a subject that you're actually intrinsically interested in. And I just happen to be intrinsically interested in business and marketing.
In business and marketing. Yeah.
But I don't know why. It's just something about how I was raised, or that's not true because my dad's like a high school teacher and like a basketball coach. My mom's like a childbirth educator. So, but this does scare me a bit. Have you heard of Treehouse?
No.
So they're a Portland company, and I think they're doing pretty well in terms of growth. But they're an online, I think, coding, design, kind of
Hmm.
like practical, tactical tools. Um, so yeah, I would encourage all my students to maybe this summer, if there's not jobs to start working at, that doesn't mean your skill set has to stand still. So there's, you know, I think Canva, use Canva at all? You know Canva?
Uh-huh.
That's like my favorite company right now in terms of startup world. The backstory is pretty neat. You should interview, I forget what her name is. She's the CEO.
I'm gonna add that to the list. All right.
Her backstory is awesome. She was like just hustling as like 18, working on like yearbooks for like different. She was like helping different high schools like do their yearbook design. It was like a small business, and she just created some tools that were more broadly accessible. And now they're like, coming in to take market share away from Adobe, which is insane. Um, But yeah, Rachel uses Canva like crazy for work,
Hmm.
and it's super powerful. I have lots of students that turn assignments in Canva, but they have a like their own course. So a lot of companies now provide courses but you can get trained up in using their software, and you have more tangible skill. So, all right, that transitions to the last part of this discussion that I'd like to have you partake in, which is your advice for students
Oh
looking
God.
to enter into technology, entrepreneurship, and just general career advice. You were on Good Morning America as a 22-year-old?
No. What was it? Nightline.
Nightline. What did why did you go on Nightline as a 22-year-old? I think that's a good starting point for.
It was 2008. It was we were entering into a recession, and there was like this mass apathy from graduating class at the time to find jobs, especially in business and
Yeah.
finance. No one was hiring on Wall Street for a long period of
You
time.
remember Grace Wallace? I
Yeah,
bel
she used to live like a couple
yeah.
blocks up the road
I
here.
believe she had a job through like one of these programs where Washington Mutual would take like very talented students or whatever, and then like bring them through some management training program with like a signing bonus and like all the everything set up. And then like within a month, Washington Mutual went like basically out of business, and Chase had to acquire them, and the whole thing was canceled. And she's like, "Oh,
Wow.
I guess I'm not doing that
Never mind.
anymore."
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that reminds me of this.
But I was on Nightline because they were interviewing a graduating student looking for a job in a tumultuous job landscape.
Do you remember what
So,
your advice, or didn't
so
they coach you? Like they had the headset
I
in?
worked. I worked with a career coach.
Yeah,
Her name's Peggy Klaus.
nice.
We're still in
No
contact. She
way.
lives just over the
Wow.
bridge in Berkeley. Yeah, they put like a headset in my ear. Well, we had a bunch of coaching
Mm,
sessions where we talked about bragging about
mm,
ourselves and language and inflection and speaking like an adult and
yeah,
not ums and ahs and likes
I'm so
and
bad at that.
not speaking with upward inflection and being decisive. And then I was interviewed by a person named Cliff Libby, who's like marketing manager at
Mm,
a web startup called experience.com. And yeah, they put like a CIA thing in my ear, and he would ask me questions, and she was in the back somewhere, like coaching me while I was taking an interview.
so from that
Unique
experience,
experience.
yeah, you have advice to share. I guess practice
No,
speaking in front of a camera, maybe, but
no. I mean, you guys, I'm sure you have enough kind of interview advice. It's I think right now we're at such an interesting point, culturally, society, there isn't going to be like an after period to this. Like
mm,
it's going to be different. Like it's like school's going to be different. Job interviews are going to be different. Hiring's going to be different. Companies are going to be thinking about investing in new areas differently. Like it's hopefully for the better. And,
yeah,
amazing companies, like we've been on this 10, 11 year run
mm,
as an economy, and it's time for it to swing
shift, yeah,
back. And amazing companies will be built in this time period. Like I'm sure of it. I'm sure another Zoom. I'm
yeah.
sure another telepresence company will be built. But advice, I don't know. I was a philosophy major
Yeah, that's what we need.
doing
We need
startups.
we need some philosophy. What about the mental game? I feel like all the students things will work out in the end for my students. Like I've seen that for years now, and like yeah, there'll be struggles. I think generally just the ages from like 22 to like 25 is a little bit of a you're young and healthy and things are fun, but it's a little bit of a struggle transitioning from this road where everything's laid out in front of you to lots of uncertainty and usually shitty
I,
jobs. Um,
I can share, Connor, a practical resource
mm,
with you. I'll text it to you or something that a mentor of mine, his name's Jeremiah Ao Yang. He's like
mm,
this self-made. He started blogging, and now he runs a little consulting company doing innovation for large companies. And he and Scott Monty, who was like very famously the Ford digital innovation guy for a long time in the industry, they put together a resource. It's like an online wiki or Google Doc where people are adding in
mm,
uh, like examples like those ed tech companies like
mm,
that are free right now.
mm.
So you can get trained up on Salesforce for free, or
Yeah,
you can sign up for Lynda, the LinkedIn learning
yeah,
platform, for like 3 months for
yeah.
free. Or so there's like a lot of companies are reacting to the situation now and giving people the opportunity to up level.
Yeah.
You know, and then now you have more time than ever to do it. So
Yeah. I think actually for some students, the fact that hiring's paused, it gives them a little bit of calm because it's like, well, I don't have to worry about getting a job so much because,
yeah, like the
yeah,
anxiety of competition is kind of
yeah.
removed.
And I do think there's the mental game of like how to deal with the uncertainty is probably the biggest struggle for students at this stage.
Yeah.
I don't have any great wisdom for that, but I didn't do philosophy as a major in college.
And you know, we're doing a startup in a cash stretched environment
Yeah,
where it's hard to raise external financing right now,
yeah,
and uncertainty is sort of the name of the game.
yeah. I guess if you're gonna go to work in startup land, you have to be somewhat uh, confident that you can handle the uncertainty that's going to come with it.
Yeah,
Um,
or be excited by it.
yeah, I mean it's ups and downs. So I've lived vicariously through your adventures. I think, yeah, at one point in time, on paper, you were worth a lot of money. Uh, not to embarrass you,
Whatever, whatever.
but it's like on paper, so it's like, it could actually manifest or it could change. Like you were very, I think, level-headed about that and trying to um, be, you know, setting yourself up such that in the future, when uncertainty hits, you won't be like feeling this sense of loss and then all the panic that sets in with that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Uh, yeah, you also made career transition, right? Because you were successfully moving in this digital marketing world, and you kind of came out as an analyst in the tech world. Um, for someone who doesn't know what they want to do or is open to a wide possibility set, what are things that, if you went back in time, like let's say, what would be something that'd be exciting you, just like idea generation for them?
I think marketing is like such a good place for that in particular. Like you need to be interested in people and like thoughts and
Mm,
emotions. And like that's at its root. Like when you're trying to stoke an audience or convince someone to do something,
yeah,
and you know, more and more likely it's online. Uh, that needs to excite you. Like, so
yeah,
like you need to, if you're not excited by like the relationships in your life, you're probably not going to be excited about marketing.
yeah. You could do
Um,
marketing analytics. That's just straight
that's
data.
That's true, but I mean, that's a good kind of segue. Like marketing now enables you to have access to so many technical and or design oriented
Yeah.
fields. Like it's a pretty horizontal business function that
Hmm.
goes across many levels of companies, and you get an opportunity to work with product, or you get an opportunity to work with sales and distribution, and it's like a good I think at a time 10 or 15 years ago is a pretty like specific skill set,
Yeah.
but now, you know, marketing is so customer acquisition is like its own thing.
Yeah,
And,
it's almost like
uh,
business now is thought of through the lens of the customer. So it's like marketing
yeah,
is integrated
and
everywhere.
right, right.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned that one website that I'll share with students. Any other resources or just books that you found useful or podcasts that you'd plug
Books.
besides the All
Uh,
Turtles podcast?
yeah, right.
Huh.
There's, no, so these are undergrads, right?
Yeah,
How old's people in this class? 18, 19, 20.
probably more like 22, 23.
All right. I would latch on to a couple personal finance books at this
Mm-hmm.
time in your life,
Yeah,
you know, especially now.
yeah.
Um,
What's your favorite you've seen in that realm?
for practicality's sake, I like his name's Ramit Sethi.
Mm,
Did a blog.
yeah,
It's a really cheeky title. It's called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich."
yeah. I like him too.
Um, but
He's entertaining.
but it just, I mean, yeah, that's one thing. It captures your attention.
Yeah,
It's entertaining. But he just
yeah.
gives very practical advice for like not getting screwed.
Yeah, he has a interview, I think, with Tim Ferriss on negotiating for creative types that I send to
Uh
students when
huh.
they're going through negotiation. I try to convince
Cool.
students to negotiate even for roles where they're almost like 100% sure that it's just like a standard package for like a new hire because the that's like a skill that you want to get, and if you just partake in the process of doing it and try to communicate like using his language around like I intend to add a lot of value and I want to throw myself into this and I'm going to forgo other opportunities, and so in order to do that now I'm looking for X. and they can come back and say, no, we just don't do that. And you can be like, okay, cool, I'll take the job. Like, I'm desperate for a job. But I think just going through that process will then put you into a place of more comfort, such that later on in your life, when everything's negotiated over, you're in a better place. So he's got an excellent podcast and blog on that topic in particular, but that's how I think I discovered him.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, personal finance. I like this guy Trent Griffin. He has a book that's like finance/wisdom, and there's also like a samurai finance or something like that. I used to read that a bit in the past, but
It's a blog,
yeah,
right?
blog. He
Yeah.
got he started like his own from home business, basically blogging on personal finance. But
Yeah. I mean, this is stuff that you just don't learn until you are forced to, which is like right
yeah,
around now, that early 20s age.
yeah, and I think now like Robinhood, basically you can trade for free if you believe in efficient market hypothesis. The
Right.
prices you're not going to be wrong. You can't be the fool. But don't trade on margin. Don't have credit card debt if you can avoid it, or at least get rid of it as soon as you can. The other one I have on this topic is rent an apartment that's cheaper than your budget by like at least $100, and then at the end of the year use that $1,000 difference to go on like a cool vacation with friends. And that's
Yeah.
based on all the psychology of happiness, which is like we get used to things that are stable. So like a nice countertop or a nice anything that's in our life that's unchanging, we just get used to it, and so like any joy we get from it evaporates really quickly. But
Hmm.
experiences and looking forward to vacations and memories of vacations with friends. So if you could convince like 5 friends to all do that, then you have $5,000 for some sweet Airbnb, and you can like have a week long whatever.
But yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not good at like general advice. I don't have anything unique or interesting to say on that front. But for specific advice, like if people are interested in coming to the Bay Area
Mm.
whenever that becomes available,
Yeah.
or talking to tech companies, or talking about different roles at tech
Yeah.
companies, or talking about doing a startup, or any of that stuff, I'm pretty well connected out here and
Awesome.
actually enjoy those
Nice.
one-on-one experiences. I've found myself as a stand-in mentor for lots of my friends, younger siblings, and relatives. So that's something I like to do.
Yeah, I count you as wise counsel, personally. So, yeah, I think Uber was started in the last financial crisis.
Yeah, Airbnb.
Airbnb was around that time too.
Uh-huh.
And those were all companies that were rolling out in city by city, and they needed young people who were willing to take a risk and be like the local manager of a new location. And so there's one thing is like if students pay attention to your company or other companies in the tech space, usually when a company's doing well, they do some PR and they announce it. And so if that company's doing well and they just raised some money, they're usually hiring. And at a certain point, they just want like product design people that my students wouldn't be in the position to get hired for. But then they move to more like customer service, sales, um, type roles.
I think the current COO at Uber, or he was definitely a former COO, he was the third or fourth hire. He was fresh out of college, had no business experience, and would just tweet at Garrett Camp
Mm,
a bunch. He was one of the co-founders of Uber,
yeah.
and just worked his way, just hustled his way into a business role at that company.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can kind of get a sense of knowing someone just through Twitter. Do you have any areas, you said health and wellness are what you're interested in, but are there any companies that you'd shout out as like you think are kind of exciting in those spaces?
In the health and wellness
Just for
space,
someone
well,
to
it's
kind of
interesting.
develop, follow something, or it could be a person in the space, or
Sure. There's a company that we're actually working. Well, oops, I don't know if I can say. There's a company called Modern Health.
uh-huh.
It's like an employer. Like I don't if anyone's used Calm or
Mm,
Headspace, which are I think the most profitable categories of apps right
wow.
now. You'd be surprised the number of millions of people
Yeah,
that pay 40, 50, $60 a
I
month to have
know.
access to.
Just to fall asleep at night when they could listen to my YouTube. explaining how to do data analysis.
Wait, where's this going to be distributed? This will be on
We can
YouTube.
put it on YouTube.
Is it going to go on TikTok by any chance?
Oh,
Sorry, that's my one.
I'm a star. I got all the creeps of the internet trying to contact.
But no, there's lots of cool companies in the health and wellness space. Modern Health is one. It's like an employer sponsored one that's really cool. There's another that we're working with that I'm excited by called Carrot Fertility. It's the first of its kind. It's for fertility it's employer sponsored fertility benefits, especially for older adults or LGBTQ community. Who don't typically have access to things like egg freezing or all the services associated with that.
So if I'm a company and I want to recruit or retain a certain employee,
you need to offer these types of benefits.
It'd be a benefit that would stand out. I know like Microsoft provides excellent maternity and paternity care and benefits, and like if you have a child with autism, I think they provide like up to maybe, I want to say $10,000 a year for additional services with that, which is
wow.
Pretty impressive. And I've had some friends who work for companies like that, and they just are like, I'm not going to leave because it's too important to their life. How's Jessica's company doing?
Spot.
Yeah.
So Jessica's my co-founder. She sort of pseudo left All Turtles to become CEO of Spot. Spot is a bot. It is a chat interface for safely reporting workplace harassment and discrimination. Spot is, they're chugging along. Like they, right now it's a tough time to raise external financing. Yep. Although I think I saw an announcement on my phone minutes ago that Stripe just raised another,
Stripe,
like 600 million at a 30 something billion valuation.
Stripe's doing well.
It's the darling of all the companies right now. But Spot, they're doing well. Like they're able to, like they haven't had to furlough anyone through this whole crisis. So it's, that in itself is a win.
Yeah. And do they have like just certain customers? Is like a beta where they're working for a few customers as they're refining what they're providing, or have they kind of fully distributed?
That's right. That's right. So it's you can go, it's talktospot.com. Anyone, can use it. You can use it for your own benefit. But they're in the dozens of customers right now. And some are more significant than others. Some are like universities actually. And they're working on, they're still identifying product market fit. They're still figuring out what's there exactly. It might just get swallowed up by a large company. It might and become a feature on some enterprise suite, or they're working with some customers now about developing some custom tools that could apply to other industries, and so they're figuring it out. But it's going well.
Cool. Well, thank you a lot for your time and your wisdom. We're going to have you on another later lecture that's more up your alley in terms of, additionally in your wheelhouse in terms of how do you promote and design products such that they'll take off and be adopted versus kind of not go viral.
Cool. Love it.
So I think that'll be like in a week or two. And you're just hoping share your knowledge with the next generation. So if anyone wants to find you, they can find you on LinkedIn, Twitter. What's the best place to reach out?
I guess Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, either of those work.
Okay.
It's my name, Jon Cifuentes.
Yeah, which we can all read right here on the screen. Okay, John, I'm going to end this